Hey, Zach. Long
How
time
are
no
you?
talk.
How are you
Good.
doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing so great. Where were we recently?
We were in Huntington Beach for Future Proof.
Why were we in Huntington Beach?
For
Wait,
Future Proof. I just said it. Try, 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 try to keep up.
oh my gosh. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Advice Business Podcast. Hello, Kelsey.
Hello, Zach. How are
How are
you?
you?
I'm doing
Jinx.
very well. Jinx.
Are we? It seems like
Yeah,
at what
we're
take
a little burnt out,
what
but
take
we're
is
doing
this?
good.
Just to get the
This
beginning of the
is take
podcast going?
3. Well, you're being very picky. You're being very picky,
Well, it has
and
to
you
be
want
like
it to be
vaguely.
perfect.
Well, I'm just looking for vaguely on the rails at this point, so I think we're off to the races. Where were we recently?
In Huntington Beach, California.
Which, by the way, you've moved across the country, so you're like a local now.
I
Is
just
that
drove up there, just zipped on up there from San
yeah?
Diego, which was great. It was much easier to get there compared to
Yeah.
last year for me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say compared to me. I thought you just had
And
sympathy for
compared
me.
to you. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Why were we there?
We were at Future Proof. This was my third Future Proof, for Future Proof Festival, and your fourth, right? So we were up there. We were up there with two different members from the team, Dave, our head of investments, and Joel, our director of advisor success. And it was awesome, but we are a little burnt out, hence the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's, we think the coolest way to experience the future of wealth management on a beach in Huntington, getting sunburned and hearing all sorts of different talks and breakthrough meetings, which we'll talk about. But it is exhausting. It's like you get back and you have to jump back into emails and the regular work and recover. But I think, we're there. So we're excited to kind of recap. It is 4 years for me, which is crazy. So to kind of think back the arc over the last 4 years, but more importantly, like what did we actually take away from being there this time? What does it mean to seeds? What do we think is going on in the industry? I'll let you start. What is like your headline takeaway from Future Proof 2025?
Yeah, I mean, for us at Seeds, I feel like, and we talked about this a little bit, but I feel like we had a much, I felt like this time around, it was much easier for us to communicate why we were there, what we were about. And there were a number of people who already knew about us, which is new for us as a tiny startup or an early startup. And typically, I feel like no one's heard of what we do at all when I'm meeting with folks in the breakthroughs. But this time around, I do feel like there were more people I was meeting with who had already seen our content or who knew about the podcast or our rebrand or our Series A, which was definitely different. And so it was a lot easier to have those conversations because they were already somewhat familiar with what we do, which was great. So that was, I think, the biggest difference for me. I do leave every Future Proof, though, feeling on the one hand excited and very motivated and energized to continue doing what we're doing and we're 100% on the right track. And then on the other hand, overwhelmed and overstimulated almost with how many different inputs, how many different insights I'm getting across all the interactions, not just the breakthroughs, but the talks, the breakthroughs, just interacting with people on the boardwalk there. So I feel that way now. I still haven't fully processed, I don't think. As you know, I'm a verbal processor. So I haven't had enough chance to talk through
This
this
is
with
it.
anybody. Here we are.
If you're
Yeah. So
listening to
for
this,
me,
this is
yeah,
Kelsey's verbal
buckle up.
processing. Yeah, exactly.
Buckle up, everybody, because there were so many conversations and moments that I had where I was like, oh, filing that away. I need to put that together with all this other stuff that I've been thinking about or wondering about. But what about you? What was your biggest takeaway? I feel like yours is a lot more succinct than mine. Yours is more
just
focused.
the feeling is, I would describe it the same way. It's always exciting, invigorating, but also overwhelming, somewhat sometimes in a negative way of, there's just so much to still figure out. And sometimes I have a feeling of little bits of kind of like forest through the trees when we have these gatherings, because there's always sort of shiny object stuff. There's always cool, interesting things to be talking about. But we're also in an industry that still fundamentally struggles with the fundamentals in so many ways that like when it sometimes feels like we're avoiding the blocking and tackling stuff to talk about this sort of shinier object stuff. So my big takeaway is AI is everywhere. It was, every demo, not every, but many of the breakthrough conversations, many of the, different conversations on stages. What is AI doing for our industry? What does it mean to advisors? But the thing that it always seemed to come back to, not every time, but sort of like, what is the big takeaway of what AI means? Is this efficiency narrative of it makes us faster at doing our jobs, it frees up more time, and all these different use cases where it kind of fits into, tasks in the business. And you and I talk about, like, before even AI comes into the conversation, it's always like, what are you trying to make more efficient? And what are you freeing up time to do? So like, are you actually being faster at something you're already good at or not? And that's where I think, I'm always interested to see how advisors take away. There are great use cases. There are reasons to be more efficient in certain areas, but what have they not solved from a client experience perspective? And what are the things that need to be in place to create a compelling client experience before they should be layering efficiency onto that experience? So yeah, that's like the AI thing, I think for me is like, what you just said. On one hand, extremely exciting and interesting, and we should be paying attention and having all these conversations. On the other hand, I fear sometimes that advisors are chasing a shiny object before they're really solving, more fundamental, issues. So that's mine.
Yeah. And I mean, to pull that apart a little bit, I do think there are very obvious like use cases for AI now where it's like things you must do. Like this isn't an experience when it's like something that must happen. So I think of our friends at Archive Intel and how, compliance in general, if you're an RIA, that's a big deal. There are standards for that. There are different things that need to happen in your business just to support the compliance like function and stuff like that. I think is a very obvious use case because it really is about just like freeing up as much time as possible to be able to spend that time elsewhere. But then there are other examples, like we saw a lot of demos of planning tools, so like AI-based planning tools, where my question is and has always been, what do people actually desire out of their financial planning experience or out of their financial advice experience, and scaling up what has traditionally been done in this industry, similar to what we talk about at Seeds, but scaling up that model before questioning if it is in fact the right model. And our clients, especially next generation clients or clients that are less traditionally served by the industry or that the industry wasn't built for, are they satisfied with that experience and how satisfied are they? I think so much of what we hear in terms of like client satisfaction, and this is me speaking anecdotally through the advisors I've worked with, but it depends on the advisor. Like so much of the experience that somebody is getting is dependent upon the advisor who's delivering it and how they deliver it. And it came up in the Adam Kush episode, but like it doesn't really matter which planning tool you use or which, portfolio management tool you use. You can substitute them, but really what matters is how you're using the tool. And so I do think AI presents like an opportunity, but also it's an opportunity to really scale up, but it's also an opportunity to really scale up the wrong things if you're not careful and if you're not slowing down enough to say, if I am going to onboard a new planning tool, what do I want it to do for me? And how do I want to deliver the experience around my planning offering?
My snarky line to somebody the other day was like, before you start vibe coding a financial plan, because it's somehow, it's faster than doing it in call it whatever, a legacy planning tool. Do you really actually know what financial planning solutions you provide to which client types, in what sequence? How do you communicate it? When do you communicate it? How is your team structured to support you in delivering that experience consistently? If all of that isn't in place, it doesn't matter that, you can spin up a cash flow, whatever, 5 times faster than in a different platform. Like it's great. It's not, that's the thing. It's not a bad thing. But the second I see advisors just chase that because it's faster, it's shinier, it's cool, it's an interesting, I type in a premise and AI can generate this output. It's amazing. But I get this anxiety of don't do it until you've actually answered those questions, because you just said it. Like, you have to scale up good. You can scale up anything, but make it good before you scale it up.
Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts on because there is the counterpoint to that would be, well, let's test and learn rapidly. And some of these legacy tools don't really allow for that. It's really hard to rapidly try different approaches because it takes so long to even get one output that you trust. And I do have this question. I mean, we don't have an in-depth knowledge of all of these new tools and these new players in terms of how much and how easy is it to troubleshoot those reports? How easy is it to feel confident in those outputs? We don't have all of those inputs, but I would assume that it is faster to produce different types of deliverables. So what's your take on the balance between figure it out, but then also we need to be iterative and maybe AI is going to help us iterate faster?
I think if you weren't testing and iterating before that making it faster doesn't make you test and iterate. I don't think that's...
it's more of a mindset and an approach to business than it is.
Yeah, again, you should, after 5 years in the business, let's say, be fairly calibrated to how you deliver financial planning services, what those services are, how expansive they are, how they match the demographic you're selling into, how you go through a discovery process in order to determine which permutations of the plan you're going to deliver, again, in what sequence. If that doesn't exist and you haven't been able to calibrate with the existing tools, I don't know that, my fear is that it actually has the opposite effect, right? It's you're not actually iterating, you're just more quickly generating a different version of a similar story, but you still don't know at what point in time in the arc of the customer experience to deliver that thing. The risk is that you start disrupting. It really could have the other effect too of you're unknowingly testing, but you're not iterating, right? You're sort of throwing things at the wall in front of the customer that, if you weren't in the mindset of, okay, I'm going to do this to test and iterate, then it could have a pretty negative effect, I think.
Yeah. I'm kind of torn on this because I feel like on the one hand, yes. And then on the other hand, if that tool is there and it makes it that much more efficient, should that not be explored? I think maybe the biggest takeaway is just if you don't already know who your offer is for and how you want to deliver it, and you don't know if it's delivering a high quality experience or the experience that would warrant the fee that you're charging and make you feel confident in delivering that fee and quoting it, basically. If it's not already doing that, speed toward that. Step one, rush toward that. I had an interesting conversation with one advisor who has a lot of experience, but his biggest pain point was actually just he didn't feel confident in charging a planning fee. And I think what's interesting about that is you hear that a lot, in the industry, of just this anxiety, even around the 1% or around a planning fee plus the 1%, or any variation of what we hear. We've run into advisors who are feeling a little insecure about it and feeling nervous to quote or to hold steady on their fee. And I do think that's the thing to rush to. I guess that would be my takeaway based on everything that we've just talked about is rush to that first, because if you're distracted by implementing a new tool, no matter what that tool is, you're not going to solve that core problem, and the tool's not going to solve it for you. Having a faster way to do something doesn't make you feel like you're delivering more value or make your customer perceive more value necessarily.
That's what scares me the most, I think. What you just said is not the shiny object, you're just chasing something because it's cool. It's that you actually think it's the silver bullet to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes me nervous about it. Because again, I'm not anti. I think I'm all for it's where we should be going. These use cases are all, totally legitimate use cases. But if they obfuscate the necessary steps before that you need to take to then actually get the benefit of it, that's what's scary to me, right? It's not going to solve the problem. You're going to be, again, think of other use cases, whatever examples, like churning customer communications, same thing, right? If it's AI writing my email for me and I don't have to physically type it, that's awesome. It's an efficiency win. And maybe it can even go deeper and provide insights, and you start to get into sort of the experience layer of it. But I go back to, if you don't know who your clients are from a personality standpoint, if you don't know what they want to hear from you, if you've never actually communicated to them what that communication process will be, if you haven't built the guardrails around these use cases, and then you flip a switch and say, now I have an AI tool that's looking at data and can write an email on my behalf, before you even get to the compliance components of that you'll have to solve as a firm, have you put basic guardrails around why you're even doing it? That's the stuff that, again, like if you really, really zoom out, my honest opinion is that we've like completely jumped the shark with AI. If on the whole, I talked to an advisor to kind of bring this into the realm of investment management a little bit for a second, which is our world at Seeds. This was a vendor at a dinner. So someone who talks to advisors all day, every day, all different sort of advisor types. He worked, with larger firms, smaller firms. And he's like, out of 100 firms, maybe one of them I'd give my money to manage on my behalf. So I juxtapose that sentiment, which is not rare, and that's a person who's in the industry literally selling into financial advisory firms. So you can imagine what the general next-gen perception of our industry is, if that's like our internal perception of the industry. And the gap between that and what is so fundamental or should be fundamental to our value and the shininess of AI that now we're all chasing with these use cases, that's super scary to me, because on the one hand, wow, the industry is innovating. We're moving forward. We're doing these incredible things. AI is now supporting advisors in these efficiency use cases. And yet there is the possibility that it actually worsens the problem, because we're perceiving it as a silver bullet. We think it's going to solve these things. And we're kind of, losing focus on the things that arguably are 30 years behind that need to be solved across a lot of the industry. So that's my rant.
I mean, you're touching on one of the things that I came out of future-proof thinking a lot about. We think about this and talk about this all the time at Seeds because our solution is something that intends to improve the experience between the advisor and the client, but we sell to advisors. So advisors being aware that there's an experience issue between them and their clients as it relates to investment management is the first step in the journey here. And it's an area where we've honestly struggled, because I think that because of what you just said, where there is like an end investor misunderstanding or confusion around what an advisor does and how they should or should not be doing it. It's like kind of this like unknown threat or like unacknowledged threat, because as a vendor who provides services to advisors, we don't get to be in those rooms in the moment where there's rejection, or even reach out to a lead that went cold, or do any of those things that I would personally want to do to prove my own point about a lot of this. Oh, go ahead.
I'm so amped up now.
You're too excited.
I'm all riled up. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, go for it.
It is so existential. And to me, the fact that every stage, every conversation is not about the real existential thing in the room, which is not AI. I mean, AI is existential for like humanity's reasons, not like in a broader sense. Like if it really goes where it's all going, not only are we out of a job, but the world ends if you really push it out far enough. But what is really existential that has been there all the time, that again, like the customer still doesn't understand our value, and the amount of financial advisors I talk to that have a big bravado about their value proposition, but at the end of the day, don't really have deep conviction on what they do, why they do it, what the value is. And there's a spectrum. Obviously, some have conviction and they're doing it really well and they're executing and their customers love them. There's many, many, many financial advisors that are in that category, but there's so many that aren't. And the broad end client experience, you go ask somebody on the street, what is the value of a financial advisor? And they're under the age, well, I would say across demographics, but let's say under the age of 45, it's really hard for people to articulate it. So what are we doing talking about, vibe coding financial plans and not this like truly existential, what is our value? What services do we provide? How do we provide them? How do we bring people into this industry that can actually sustain this into the future? And by the way, I'm sure there were a whole bunch of these conversations happening while we were there. And, I'm overgeneralizing that it was all about AI. Yeah.
Well, I think you're touching on like something that, and maybe there were a lot, like I heard a talent panel, but I've heard so many talent panels, to be honest, and it sounded very similar to like 4 other talent panels across other industry events that I've been to. But there is kind of like a bracketing of like, okay, we have our efficiency stuff, which historically in the industry, like almost every tech product has been built to drive efficiency and to make an advisor more efficient or make an ops person more efficient or make a service person more efficient. That's really been the point. So we have that whole bucket. And then we take the experience bucket and that is simplified. That's really distilled down into like relationships. That's at least my interpretation is like, okay, we have our experience, which is our relationship with our advisor or with our client. And then we have efficiency, and our tech and our process drives our efficiency. And I think what's interesting about that is just like this idea that, so in any other industry, experience is not just about relationships. And it gets back to something at Seeds that we talk about all the time with advisors. It's like, if you are not actually legit, like if you aren't good at the services you're providing, or you're not confident that you're good at delivering the services that you are charging a fee for, your experience will suffer. A relationship won't carry that burden. It won't. So you can be a great people person and you can be great at building relationships and great at building trust in a very like surface level way. But ultimately, all of these things have to come together to serve up a really good client experience. And I think that's what's interesting is that for all of the efficiency talk, it's just efficiency for the sake of efficiency, not efficiency plus getting better at the fundamentals and establishing some sense of like what is a best practice. I actually think the planning realm of the industry has done the best job of this, to be perfectly fair. Like, I think if somebody is going out and charging a fee for planning, I do think that they are like, okay, there are deliverables, there are like meaningful touch points there, and that's because they've gone out and they're literally like delivering a bill and saying like,
Right.
You will pay me for this. So you have to, you have to be legit in that way. Whereas I think it's a little bit sneakier and it's a little bit more misunderstood by end investors if the fee is just getting deducted from their account. And so it's a little easier to just kind of be like, well, this is how I do it. You know what I mean? But there's not an established like industry-wide best practices to like how you do it and how you talk about it. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but it is something I've definitely noticed where it's like kind of just relationship and like the people part is experience, and then like efficiency is all about process and tech. And there's not kind of a nice loop around between all of those things.
Yeah, the fact that technology, the primary, that's what's interesting to me about AI is really, in my mind, just an extension of the same technology value proposition from, the beginning of like wealth tech, let's call it, in this industry. That's what it's been about. Make the behind the scenes mechanical, tasky stuff faster and easier. And that's it. That is the core narrative. And much of the AI value prop is centered on the same ideas. Just make you faster, free up more time. And again, those aren't inherently bad things. But there's no reason that technology shouldn't be in support of experience, as you just said. What are the ways, with AI, the way we think about it is the real things that advisors get hired for, and this is kind of the irony of it, is all of the relationship, human connection stuff. And that's where we can be better and have systems around delivering that stuff. And there's no reason that technology shouldn't be way more focused on that, right? I can, as a technology company, help you hire the right people for you to drive core processes to deliver a consistent experience. But can our technology actually help elevate the experience in a way that's not just about, giving you an extra hour and a half or whatever a day? That should be part of it. I'm not saying, again, it's not that that's a bad thing. It's just interesting that, technology's story in this industry has never, to your point, really been focused on that. And that's where we're trying to focus. How do you really make yourself that much more human and create a better experience through technology, that we think is the right path?
It's interesting because even as I'm hearing you say that, this is why it's so hard for us to talk about like the bigger vision of Seeds. Because like even as you're saying this, I'm pulling it apart. I feel like, yes, we think that the relationship is the driver of why does someone want to work with a financial advisor? It's the relationship, it's the human part of, it's the humanness between the two, and we want to maximize that. But I think what we believe in terms of what most companies think of as an efficiency driver, I think we more look at the tech as serving the role of creating operational excellence that you could layer a human experience on top of. And I think that's the difference. It's like an efficiency play versus an excellence play. I can make you more efficient. AI can make you more efficient at delivering anything, as you said. It can make you more efficient at delivering an amazing experience or more efficient at delivering a really shitty experience. But it's not just about showing up as a human. Showing up as a human has to be backed by the knowledge. And this is just my personal belief, but we talk about this all the time internally, and we've been pulling it apart for like messaging, but like you can't show up and have a human conversation with me if you're insecure about what your offering is, if you're worried, if you're stressed, if you know that you're not offering the best service in town or available to your customers. It's going to be really hard for you to sit and just have a human conversation with me as a potential customer if you don't have confidence in what you offer. And I think that's the difference, is that a lot of these players that we talk to are really there to solve a pain point and to make that pain point more efficient, or to allow you to expand your services. And Kitsy's did a whole study on this too. Like, don't get me started on the talk from Colorado when we were there, where it was like, yeah, we've created all this space and we've created all this efficiency. And what have we done? We've just added more and more services. Now we're tax people. Now we're estate planner. Like now we have all these other things that we're offering in addition to what we used to offer. But are you doing any of them with excellence? Are you actually sitting there and confident in the room saying like, yes, what I do, I'm amazing at it. It reminds me of that one advisor we came across that all that advisor did was investment management, the most basic website ever. Like it looked like the website came from like the 90s. And he was like growing exponentially because that was it. It was like, this is what I do. I do it really well. I mean, granted, I don't remember if he actually did it very well to our standards. But my point is just like doing something really well allows you to show up and be present and be in the room and be a human. And so therefore, yes, the experience is better.
And you just made me think of what we really talk about and in the product vision here. We've said it now a couple of times, but making efficiencies for the sake of freeing up time is great. But what are you going to do with that time? And I think the way we think about it is you have to answer both questions. If you can actually connect that together, free up time to then transition that time into what that actually enhances the experience. So our version of that is, again, a whole rabbit hole rant, but the fact that as an industry, the amount of advisors I talk to that are putting calendar reminders on their, Outlook calendar for when to do tax loss harvesting or rebalance portfolios or raise cash or rebalance new cash, all of these trade operations things that as an industry we've just convinced advisors is actually in your purview and what you should be doing with your time. If you're not doing that with your time, if you could actually stop doing that, what could you actually translate that time into? Could that be translated into you feeling more confident around what you do from an investment management standpoint because you have an experience layer that helps you deliver on that? In our opinion, that's understanding the investor in a deeper way than you traditionally have, translating that understanding into actual portfolio outcomes that are logical, that are appropriate, and then again, getting to that implementation step. But you have to have that closed loop. So if we just surfaced, we can make trade operations faster, I think that alone is a fantastic value proposition. But that closed loop of how does that advisor at the same time not just free up that time, but have that conviction you're talking about, well, so that they can be confident in the room and create an experience around investing that they haven't otherwise been able to do before because they've been busy doing trade operations behind the scenes as if that's the valuable thing we should be doing as advisors.
Yeah. And just, to add just a little bit more to that though, like going back to what I was saying, this is the perfect example because we are making you more efficient at delivering a very great personalized experience with really tight and what I'll call excellent operations to support it, right? We're making you more efficient at that. But the problem that we run into as we're having these conversations is that many advisors don't need to become more efficient at that because they aren't doing it to begin with. Because when you have to have a calendar reminder to tell you when to rebalance or when to harvest, you're not doing that every day. You're not doing that every week because it's a manual thing. So I think that's the other piece is it's so hard to talk about what we're trying to do here because no one else has talked about it in this way, at least as far as I know in the industry. But it's if you were sitting there trying to manually rebalance through whatever platform you have available to you and weekly harvest or more and do a bunch of other stuff, unwind legacy holdings and, do tax transitions effectively and run multiple pro forma analyses to present options here. If you were manually trying to do that, that advisor is going to come to us and be like, done. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But if you're not even trying to do that, that's what I'm talking about with delivering a really quality product and service offering. Because if you're not trying to do that, then we have a long way to go. Because first we have to now talk about what is the standard, what does good look like, and how can you feel confident and how can you feel conviction about what you're offering.
That's the existential thing in my mind. That vendor, the guy I was talking to at dinner who's like, I wouldn't let maybe 1 out of 100. I would actually, but what's fascinating about it is because he knows what the standard is.
Yeah, he knows what good would look like, and he knows it's really hard to do.
That's what makes it existential. The second the curtain starts to fall, and what I keep coming back to is our generation is not putting up with the nonsense, right? We just do it this way, and they're exposed to robo platforms. They're exposed to commentary. They're exposed to all sorts of different
coaches, lots of financial coaches on social media.
Yeah, so
AI.
Think about that. It's a great example. And again, the amount of coaches, and I'm not going to mention any in particular, but I'll just say there's one in particular who very ironically and hilariously is now essentially the spokesperson for a nouveau RIA that's somehow both anti-advisor but is an advisory firm at the same time. But anyway, the fact that that's all out there and it's being consumed over and over and over and over again, and that's not the existential thing that we're focused on of, wow, maybe there isn't a good enough standard and we're not consistently executing on this in a way that systems can. People want the human interaction, but if you can't have the standard, if you can't execute in a way that our generation knows should be the standard, you're toast. It doesn't matter that they want the human interaction if you can't deliver on the fundamentals. And if we're just saying, forget about the fundamentals, let's chase AI use cases for fun and vibe code, it's a scary, I don't think we're really fully appreciative of where this could go if we really just kind of let it keep going and unwinding. Our generation, we have forget about 15 years younger than us, right? But our demographic that now has wealth complexity and seeks human financial advisors for all the human reasons they'd rather do that than go through a robo platform. We have a standard expectation that if you're not even close, I'll go the other way. And that is I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm repeating
well,
myself.
it's a trust. Yeah. Well, I do think even for folks like the example you gave, he is from the industry. He knows what good looks like. You and I have a better idea of what good looks like than your average person. But I can tell you anecdotally that people who have even light exposure to this industry generally speaking, don't trust financial advisors. So I do think that uphill battle we've talked about on the podcast before is already at play, and they just have more options. That's the reality. There's just more options. You're dealing with a more complicated sale because you don't have to have an advisor. You don't have to anymore. And you can argue all you want that the value's there. But if the value isn't there in the minds of the people you're trying to deliver the value to, then it doesn't really matter what you think of your value. So I do think that it is that. I think that's what I came out of it with. I had a very interesting conversation with someone who does events. Not an advisor, doesn't network with advisors super regularly. But I was sharing a little bit about the amount of personalization that a Seeds advisor can deliver and how they deliver it. And she was like, where do I find a Seeds advisor? Like, why don't I have a Seeds advisor right now? I know a ton of my friends. I know a ton of people women I network with would want this. Where is the Seeds advisor? And it was just this light bulb moment for me that like, I know how to talk about this and I know what this future could look like because I spend all day thinking about this. And I think that's the biggest thing I was telling you before we got on here. Like, it just feels to me like I need to be doing more. Like, I need to be doing more. I need to be on this podcast every day talking to people about this because I do really think that we're going through the advisor who hasn't had the come to Jesus moment yet. And I think that when I'm talking to someone who's not an advisor, who is seeking an advisor or would seek an advisor, they get it immediately. And so it's just so clear to me that there's this huge disconnect between what the advisor's perception is versus what the client's perception is of these issues. And we believe in advisors. Both of us come from advisor fathers, like long in the industry. We believe in the future. We want to make it happen. But I think that's the hardest thing for me is just feeling like we're sitting on this like transformative idea and product. And just, I feel like maybe it's just us. Maybe we just suck at talking about it and we haven't figured it out yet. But when I talk to the end investor, it's very easy and simple and clear. And so I need to figure out how to get that through or I just need to go to clients and bring them into the advisors. You know what I mean? For them to prove what I'm talking about here.
It's a good story. It's and we've seen it and heard it a lot. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think what's, again, to full circle this to anxiety and exciting is that same person said, where do I find that advisor? Right? She's not saying, how do I log in and do that myself?
Yeah.
She's saying, how do I find that advisor? And that to me...
Yeah, how do I find an advisor that works that way? Like, how do I find an advisor that's the standard they hold and that's how they treat their clients and that's what they offer their clients? Like, because what we're trying to get advisors to do is so different from historically how investment management has been done. And I know that like when you sit down and you think about it, it doesn't seem that different, but it truly is. Like the entire industry was built on selling products, not on listening to what somebody cared about, especially as it relates to their portfolio. And it was built on complexity narrative and it was built on fear-based selling. Like it was built on all the opposite things from what we are preaching. So on the one hand, I understand why advisors like talk to us and they're like, this seems like a big hill to climb and we're going to work on that and make it as easy as possible. But on the other hand, it's like I still like I feel so adamant that we're right when it comes to the end investor and really advisors just haven't been empowered to have the tools to be able to do it. Exactly.
And again, selfishly, we talk to advisors every day, talk to so many at Future Proof, and they know this, they feel this. And we see them on the precipice of really seeking to solve it, both on the investment management piece, but also in general, these different fundamental pieces of delivering on experience, people, process, the right technology to support it. And I see these moments of shiny objects and watching them chase it. And it's just like, wait, just wait. I know it's exciting. I know it's super cool. You should get it. But do this first, right? Make sure you do this if you do have interest in sustaining. So yeah, it's an interesting, every year come away with a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of excitement, great insights from a product perspective, what we take back to think about continuing to build here. I'll just end with, at least for me, I still continue to come down on the excited, optimistic side.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway that is in my control, like fully in my control, well, almost fully in my control, is around education. And I know that I've been like beating this dead horse and Future Proof just reinforced it for me. But I really want to make sure that we are offering as much as we can in a more standard way instead of doing everything so ad hoc. I really want to put resources toward making sure that advisors have somewhere to go if they want to learn about how to deliver more personalization, if they want to talk about or learn about kind of some of the more fundamental aspects of investment operations and trade operations and portfolio management. Like, I want to provide that. And I think that we're in a unique position to do it because our product does span both the experience and the ops. So it's not just like a one-sided lens that we're looking through to say like, okay, this is how to make it more efficient or this is how to talk to clients. It's like, no, it needs to be both. That you need to be able to efficiently deliver what you promise in the room, and you need to know what your options are when you're in the room so that you can confidently discuss them, So that's my biggest, I think, like immediate takeaway, that we could easily kind of fill that gap. And I do think it would help in many ways. It would help advisors adopting Seeds, but also advisors who are thinking about it and who just want to learn more about how you can approach investment management in a different way.
I'm excited about that. Lots of good feedback from current advisors using the platform and advisors interested on that specifically. Just really, okay, I want to lean into telling this different story and delivering on this experience, but walk me through what that looks like from beginning to end. Okay, this was good. I felt like this was, you talked through it and we got through it. This was you processed therapy session. I'm sure it was as valuable to us as to everybody listening. We want to show everybody more. If you haven't seen Seeds, come check it out. www.useseeds.com. Reach out with questions, reach out with podcasts.
Even if you don't want to see anything and you just want to like talk to us about this. Like,
if you just want to join any of these therapy sessions.
If anyone wants to verbally process this with me,
we're happy to verbally process with you at any point. So we appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.